Hello guys, it's your friend Naruto Fanfics, back again with another awesome fanfic. Which is what if Naruto, the Dark Fox Emperor, built a powerful harem with Kyubi, Hinata, Ino, Tenten and Anko. Part 3. If you enjoy it, please show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing for more fanfics like this. And now let's get started. A fox tended to her cubs in the pure shelter that is the forest. Beautiful birds, the color of snow, sprang out of the tall trees and released their wings to fly. Wind blew through the trees, causing that trademark rustling sound. The sounds of the forest set the mood, transporting all those who resided in it into a safe haven. The only thing interrupting the endless cycle of sound within the forest were the footsteps of Team 7 plus Haku as they made their way back to Konoha. "You ready to go back?" asked Yoko glumly. "Yes, it's necessary, plus I really want to pay my girls a visit," replied Naruto with a half smile. "Enjoy the outside world while you still can, because it may be a very long time until you see it again," said Yoko in a know-it-all voice. "I really need to take Ino and Hinata to see outside the wall." "It's beautiful," said Naruto, inhaling that crisp clean air known only to the forest. "Are you planning on ravishing them in a place where you can be seen?" asked Yoko with a snicker. "Something along the lines of that," he replied with a small grin. "So, Kit, when you do get back, you'll need to get plenty of rest," said Yoko. "Why is that?" asked Naruto. "I have another Kekkei Genkai for you, but it requires you to conserve your energy," replied Yoko. "What will it do?" asked Naruto, mentally quirking an eyebrow. "It's not necessarily a Kekkei Genkai, but I will be infusing you with my chakra." "Don't worry, I am essentially a being made of chakra, so it won't harm me one bit," began Yoko, before taking a breath to continue. "There will be physical changes. Your ears may turn to that of a fox's and you may grow a tail, but in return you will gain an immense increase in power and also the ability to convert those women of yours." "What do you mean by convert?" asked Naruto. "They will receive the same changes, albeit a lot weaker. They will receive the same Kekkei Genkai you have right now, allowing them to hide their changes. Converting them allows them to be officially recognized as your mates," replied Yoko with a foxy grin. "That sounds nice. It'll make destroying that pathetic village," thought Naruto with a sadistic, gleeful smile. "I can hardly wait." Naruto abruptly stopped as a chubby fox laid in front of him on the dirt path. It had a nice, clean mane that shined a brilliant orange. Naruto smiled a bit as he admired his favorite color on his favorite animal. It cooed lazily as it slept contently. The moment of peace was over as the cute fox was rudely kicked out of the way by Sasuke. Naruto turned to face the smirking Uchiha. "Dobi got a soft spot for foxes," sneered Sasuke insultingly, causing Haku to bite her lip in anger at Sasuke's insulting attitude. The air around the two went cold as Naruto glared into Sasuke's soul. The Uchiha could swear he saw the sinister silhouette of the Kyubi behind Naruto, glaring at him with equal hatred, but that couldn't be true. The Kyubi was dead, right? Sasuke's train of thought was interrupted as Naruto grabbed him by the collar and threw him against a tree. With a thud, his back hit the rough bark of the tree. He grunted in pain. "Naruto!" scolded Kakashi as he ran to tend to Sasuke. Ignoring Kakashi, Naruto went to pick up the whimpering fox. Giving it an affectionate pat on the head, Team 7 seemed to watch on as Naruto seemingly communicated with the fox. While they couldn't hear him, they could see his lips move. With one last pat, Naruto released the fox into the forest. The chubby fox seemed reluctant to go, but it eventually left. Naruto turned back to his team. "It's wrong to harm those who can't defend themselves, Sasuke. I'm sure you know exactly what that is like," said Naruto, referring to the Uchiha massacre. "Shut up, Dobi. You know nothing of what you talk about," retorted Sasuke, whose teeth were grit in a mixture of anger and pain. Naruto chose to ignore Sasuke. Instead he decided to continue walking down the dirt path, much to Sasuke's irritation. Haku followed suit and walked beside Naruto. Without a word, the rest of Team 7 continued onward towards Konoha. "How dare that pesky Uchiha touch such a noble animal," said a very annoyed Yoko. "Elitists like him have no place on the battlefield," sighed Naruto, "his arrogance will get him killed." "If I could, I would have killed him," said the Yoko with anger in her eyes. "I can have that arranged," said Naruto with a slight smile. "Did he offend you, Naruto-sama?" asked Haku after a moment of walking, "because if he did, I can take care of him for you." "It's fine, Haku-chan. If I wanted him dead, I would do it myself," replied Naruto. "All right then, Naruto-sama. Just know that if you ever need me, I'll be there," said Haku, to which Naruto smiled. Naruto's smile did not last long though. A long shadow cast itself over Team 7 as they reached the intimidating walls of Konoha. Naruto clenched his jaw. They approached the entrance. Muttering a quiet greeting to the guards, he entered Konoha. He held back a snarl. "Konoha Urban District, home sweet home," sighed Naruto as he made his way through the urban district with Haku, all the while ignoring all the glares he received from all the villagers. Haku took note of her master's discomfort at all the glares, so she responded with her own glare. Her efforts helped slightly, but in the end, it wasn't much of a difference. Haku slowly felt a tug as Naruto's footsteps became faster. Rounding corner after corner, he walked with her with determination. They quickly made their way to a tall apartment and they ran up the stairs. Haku raised an eyebrow when they reached a door. "Finally, the only place I like in this dreadful village," thought Naruto before he knocked on the door. A few quiet footsteps were heard from the other side before the door slowly opened. Out popped Anko, whose facial expression went from pissed to surprised and then to elated. With speed so fast that not even Naruto's enhanced senses could perceive, Anko burst through the door and wrapped her arms around him. Before he knew it, he had two arms wrapped around him in a tight hug. Anko even squealed. Haku's confusion only increased. "She's crushing me. I'm being crushed by her chest," grunted Naruto as he felt his lungs forced to release the air inside of them. "Use your words. Tell her before she kills you," said Yoko in a slightly louder voice than she would have wanted to. "Can't. Not enough air," thought Naruto with a cringe. "Do you mind letting Naruto-sama go? I believe you are crushing him," said Haku calmly, knocking Anko out of her hugging trance. "Oh, sorry, Naruto-kun. It was just so terrible here without you," began Anko as she felt Naruto return the embrace. "I just missed you a lot." "Well, I'm back," replied Naruto, rubbing his hand on Anko's back, prompting her to nuzzle her face into his shoulder. "You can let go now." "I don't wanna," said Anko with a pout. "It won't be fair to the everyone else, Anko-chan," lectured Naruto, to which Anko sighed. "Fine," replied Anko as she hesitantly unwrapped her arms around Naruto. "Good girl," praised Naruto with a smile as he brought one of his hands up to caress her cheek, to which Anko blushed. "Kami, only he can make me feel this way." Guiding Anko's chin up with his hand, Naruto took a moment to look into Anko's beautiful, brown eyes. Anko's blush intensified as Naruto began leaning in. Naruto's lips quickly connected with Anko's own. The snake mistress responded fervently, wrapping her hands around his shoulders to pull him in, deepening the kiss. Their breaths mingled together inside their mouths, just like their tongues as they battled for dominance. Naruto won. Never knew a kiss could feel this good, thought Anko, just before moaning lewdly into the kiss. Never knew. They held together for another moment before pulling apart. They both gasped slightly to catch their breath. A strand of saliva remained bridged between both of their open mouths. Naruto recovered first and flashed Anko a winning smile, to which she smiled back after a few seconds. Haku stood silently behind him, her cheeks a faint pink. "Still the great kisser that I remember," said Anko. "It's only been 2 weeks," replied Naruto with a foxy grin. "I don't get rusty that quickly." "Glad so," said Anko, her cheeks still slightly flushed, but she suppressed it as she turned to Haku. "So, who is this, Naruto-kun?" asked Anko as she pointed to Haku. "This is Haku-chan. I met her on my mission," replied Naruto. "She's agreed to help our cause." "Is that true?" asked Anko, glaring at Haku. "I will do whatever Naruto-sama asks of me," replied Haku honestly, doing a small bow for effect. "Well then, let's go tell the others that I have come back," said Naruto, to which Anko snickered slightly. "What is it?" asked Naruto. "It seems that everyone is already here," replied Anko with a smile, to which Naruto grinned. Opening the slightly ajar door so that it was completely open, Anko revealed all of the girls, sitting quietly on a mat, sipping on cups of tea and snacking on potato chips. The girls reacted immediately by jumping from their seats and rushing to envelope Naruto in their own crushing hugs. "Kami, I've missed you so much," squealed Ino as she buried her face into his chest, inhaling his scent. "Likewise," continued Ayame as she rubbed her cheek on his shoulder. I've missed you too, Naruto-kun," added Hinata as she enjoyed Naruto's warmth. I've missed you all too," choked out Naruto as he was being crushed. "This is ridiculous," cried Yoko as she saw her mate get glomped by 3 women. "I would push them off, but I don't want to hurt them." "Just let them enjoy this moment," responded Naruto with a mental sigh. More than a moment lasted before the girls finally let go of Naruto. They lined up in front of them, Ayame followed by Ino and Hinata. All 3 of the girls had a light shade of pink starting on their cheeks. Naruto stepped aside to let Haku step forward. "This is Haku," began Naruto. "She will be staying here until I can find a suitable place for her to stay. And this is Ayame, Ino and Hinata," continued Naruto. "Hi, Haku-chan," greeted Ayame with a polite bow. "Good to meet ya," said Ino enthusiastically with an open pose. Hi, Haku-chan," stuttered Hinata, with a ginger bow. "It's good to meet all of you," responded Haku, putting both of her hands onto her lap, before bowing. "It's good to see you all," said Naruto as he quickly went up to the 3 girls and gave each of them a passionate kiss on the lips, followed by a quick peck to the cheek. Ayame happily obliged to the kiss but was left jealous as she saw how Ino took advantage of the situation, wrapping her arms and legs around Naruto as they kissed. Hinata was the last and she shyly leaned in on her toes. Ayame had to suppress a squeal at how cute the scene was. "It's been a very long trip back here," began Naruto, only to be interrupted by Ino. "Just hold on to that thought, Naruto-kun," said Ino before pushing Anko, Ayame, Haku and Hinata into the bedroom. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he heard faint whispering from the bedroom. He would tune on his impressive level of hearing, but he would rather prefer it to be a surprise. Leaning against the wall for a moment, he took the time to hang his trench coat and take off his boots. It wasn't long until he heard Ino call out to him for him to come into the bedroom. Feeling anticipation build up inside of him, Naruto's lips stretched into a grin. "They treat you well," observed Yoko. "I treat them well as well," replied Naruto. "They make me jealous," said Yoko with a sigh. "Why is that?" "They get to touch you and feel your touch on them," was Yoko's reply, to which Naruto nodded. "Once I fulfill the requirements you have given me, I'll make sure to ravish you," said Naruto with a foxy grin. "Ha ha, I look forward to it," giggled Yoko in response. Naruto quickly made his way to the bedroom door. When he opened the door, he was greeted with a beautiful sight. On the queen-sized bed was Anko, being touched and licked by the other girls. Ayame had her lips connected with Anko's in an intense make-out session as Ino and Haku were shamelessly sucking on Anko's nipples while Hinata was lapping at Anko's pink slit. All four of the women were very inviting. The sight spurred his drive immediately, causing a very large tent to rise from the front of his pants. "Come join us, Naruto-kun," invited Ino, before latching her mouth back around Anko's erect nipple, causing Anko to elicit a soft moan. "Just let me spice things up a bit," began Naruto with a foxy grin before putting his hands into a hand seal, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. The normally confident Ino widened her eyes as she saw 10 Narutos appear. Ayame, Anko and Haku couldn't hold back their smiles at the sight. Hinata was just confused why everyone's expressions changed so suddenly and why Anko had suddenly tightened around her tongue. With vigor, the Narutos quickly made their way to the floor. Soon as they got to the foot of the bed, Haku eagerly climbed off of Anko and wrapped her lips around one of the Narutos. "Eager, aren't we, Haku-chan?" said Naruto as Haku happily bobbed her head over his large manhood. Moaned Haku as she tried her best to nod with Naruto's inside of her throat. "You're amazing, Haku-chan," praised the Naruto whose she was currently sucking, as he used his hand to pet her head. Another Naruto quickly made her way behind her. Haku's reaction was to arch her back and spread her cheeks whilst she continued deep-throating the Naruto in front of her. Positioning his swollen head at her tight, pink rear entrance, Naruto slid his inside of her, causing Haku to moan rather loudly, only for her moan to be muffled by the inside of her throat. As she was quite used to anal, Naruto could easily ram into her with no hesitation whatsoever without fear of hurting her. "Kami, your body is amazing," complimented the Naruto mounting her from behind, before he leaned forward to plant kisses on her smooth back whilst continuing to thrust into her. While Haku went first, a squeal was heard from the other side of the bed as Ino was lifted up by one of the Narutos and placed on her side. She felt her core heat up even more as Naruto lifted one of her legs up onto his shoulder. That Naruto quickly leaned forward to deliver a passionate kiss unto Ino's lips. As the two kissed, Ino wrapped one of her hands around Naruto's and positioned it at her drenched entrance. She moaned loudly into the kiss as she felt Naruto's enter her tight folds. "Feels too good," squealed Ino as she felt the head of Naruto's give her womb a gentle kiss every time he pushed into her love canal. "You're fantastic, Ino-chan," complimented Naruto as he used his hands to massage Ino's. "Why you too," responded Ino. "Kami, I've missed you," moaned Ino as she wrapped her arms around her lover's neck. "I've missed you too, Ino-chan," replied Naruto before pressing his lips to hers, once again. Hinata had just finished bringing Anko to climax when she suddenly felt Naruto's strong arms wrap around her and lift her onto his lap. She turned her head to face him and was greeted by a passionate kiss to the lips. She moaned happily into the kiss as she felt Naruto's surprisingly soft lips on her own. A few seconds into the kiss, she blushed madly as she felt Naruto separate her lips slightly with his own to allow his tongue to explore the inside of her mouth. The kiss could only last so long until they both needed to breath. Naruto leaned in once more to give her a quick peck on her lips before positioning his at her entrance and sliding into her tight, velvet walls. "Ooh," moaned Hinata as her love canal stretched to accommodate his thick length. "You're so tight, Hinata-chan," praised Naruto as he delivered soft kisses to her neck. I love this Naruto-kun, please give me more," squeaked Hinata as she opened her mouth and motioned for one of the Narutos to approach her. Having one of Naruto's arms wrapped around her to support her, she was able to use both of her hands as she curled her hand around one of the other Naruto's thick length. Taking a moment to inhale his intoxicating scent, Hinata took his length into her mouth. She swirled her tongue around the head whilst she used her hand to stroke what she could not fit into her mouth. The scene was exhilarating, seeing the normally shy Hinata willingly do something so dirty. Just how much had she changed during the time he was gone? The rest of the Narutos soon approached Anko and Ayame. The two women stared at all of the Narutos, rock-hard lengths with eager eyes. Anko crawled over first and pulled one of the Narutos onto the bed. Her lips stretched into a sultry smirk as she straddled that Naruto's waist before lifting herself up and sliding his into her wet slit. She rode him with earnest, eliciting unadulterated moans and squeaks with every thrust. She only slowed as she felt one of the Narutos pull apart her cheeks, revealing her tight anus. "Only you, Naruto-kun. All my holes are yours," said Anko with a wink. Anko let out a long, drawled-out moan as she felt one of the Narutos begin licking at her tight, pink star. With an expert's tongue, Naruto relaxed her anus and lubricated it with his saliva. The combination of having a thick length inside of her whilst someone was pleasuring her anus with their tongue was amazing, but she knew it was going to get better. When Naruto felt that she was lubed up enough, he positioned his hard length at her puckered, rear entrance and slowly began to push into her. "Ah, ooh," gasped Anko as Naruto's began to slide itself into her tight anus. After a very pleasurable moment, Naruto's was fully enveloped by Anko's hot anus. Her anal walls did well to massage his thick length. Anko couldn't stop moaning as she felt both of Naruto's rock-hard lengths twitch inside both of her holes. She let out a wail as they started moving in unison. The sensation was epic, being so full. She was so glad she was a kunoichi, since it meant they could be more rough with her. In no time at all, she had adapted well to both there, so both of them could ram into her tight holes with vigor. Kami, you're driving me crazy," wailed Anko in pure bliss as both Narutos rammed into her with exceptional strength and speed. "Anko-chan, you're being a bit too loud, you'll startle the neighbors," said one of the Narutos as they stood in front of her, his long, thick length in front of her face. Then, MMPH. "Quiet me, ooh, down then," responded Anko as she opened with mouth wide with an "ah." With a grin, the Naruto in front of Anko quickly slid his into Anko's mouth. With skill that only years of experience being a kunoichi could give you, Anko easily took Naruto's length down her throat. She did her best to provide suction and pleasure to Naruto as she massaged his length with her throat. As if Naruto was reading her mind, he immediately put his hands around her head and began thrusting into her mouth, successfully throat her. The act caused streams of tears to cause her eyeliner to run, but she couldn't be happier. Whilst Anko happily having her way with three of the Narutos, Ayame was doing her own thing on the floor next to the bed. Whilst not as proficient in the arts like Anko, she did her best to provide Naruto and herself a great experience. She was on top of one of the Narutos, happily stroking his and licking the head of his length whilst another Naruto was thrusting into her honey pot. Like honey itself, her sticky love nectar flowed down her legs, making a small stain on the carpet floor. With every thrust, she would moan. Her moans were like music to Naruto's ears. "You're so tasty," moaned Ayame as she pulled her mouth off of Naruto's, giving it a few long strokes before wrapping her lips around it, once again. Those words seemed to spur on Naruto as he increased the strength and speed behind his thrusts, causing Ayame to moan loudly, sending pleasurable vibrations through the inside of her mouth. With the way Naruto's thick length hit her G-spot with each thrust, she knew she wouldn't last long. She just wished she was as stamina-filled as the rest of the girls. Soon, her mind went blank, as she climaxed hard. "Ah!" wailed Ayame in bliss as she felt her orgasm hit her. From the other side of the room, another pleasure-filled scream was heard. Haku looked majestic even within the throes of orgasm. Her milky skin, slightly glistening with sweat, and her eyes lolled back into her head whilst both of her tight holes were being rammed into from behind. Her moans and squeaks filled the room as both of the Narutos on her continued to thrust into her. I'm going crazy," moaned Haku as she struggled to remain composed. Gonna-kun, 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 repeated Haku with a crazy face before she finally climaxed. "Coming," cried Haku, squeezing her eyes shut and gritting her teeth. "Kami, you feel amazing around me, Haku-chan," said one of the Narutos. Both of the Narutos ramming their cocks into Haku continued thrusting until both of them let out a grunt. With exceptional force, both Narutos released inside of Haku, painting her love canals white with their seed. Haku moaned lewdly as she felt herself get filled to the brim with her master's powerful seed. "Ah, ah," squeaked Haku as her womb began filling up with Naruto's cum. A third scream was heard from beside the bed where Ino was. Ino's continued to scream in pure delight as she experienced orgasm after orgasm. In the position that she was in, Naruto could thrust directly at her G-spot, resulting in mind-blowing amounts of pleasure every time Naruto rammed into her. "And Naruto-kun, I love it when you twitch inside of me," moaned Ino, before the Naruto thrusting into her leaned forward to press his lips to hers. Even when her screams of pleasure were muffled by Naruto's lips, she was still quite loud. After what seemed to be her 7th orgasm, she felt Naruto groan into her kiss, before feeling an intense, delightful pressure build up inside of her. Tilting her head back and letting out a gasp, she felt as her womb was stretched to take in Naruto's potent seed. "Kami, I love it when you come inside me," began Ino. "I want your babies. Kami, hearing myself say such lewd things is turning me on," thought Ino, before she felt Naruto begin moving again, inside of her. On the bed, Anko continued to be rammed into by the 3 Narutos. Her stretched out holes continued to make lewd noises as the 2 Narutos inside of her continued thrusting into her whilst the Naruto she was deep-throating caused her to make glug, glug, glug noises. The Naruto's thick length had already driven her to orgasm multiple times. She was beginning to get a little jealous of Naruto's Kami-like stamina. "Anko-chan, I'm going to come," groaned one of the Narutos. "Go ahead, Naruto-kun. Fill me with your seed," moaned Anko, before taking Naruto's back into her mouth. With a grunt, all 3 Narutos climaxed inside of her. Anko let out a muffled wail as all 3 of her holes were filled to the near brim with Naruto's seed. Ropes of cum leaked out of her mouth as she was unable to swallow it all. She had never felt so full. The sound of Hinata's constant squeaking was also echoing off of the walls as 2 of the Narutos had their way with her body. She had already climaxed multiple times. Over time, Hinata was able to take in more and more of Naruto's thick length into her mouth, earning her praises and pats on the head from the Naruto whose she was currently sucking. Tears of pure bliss slid down her cheeks as she felt the most intense pleasure she had ever felt in her life. "Hinata-chan, you're amazing," whispered Naruto into her ear, "I'm going to come soon." If she could, Hinata would have smiled. She was just so happy being able to make her precious Naruto-kun feel good. With renewed vigor, she eagerly met the thrusts of the Naruto beneath her and increased the speed of which she bobbed her head on the Naruto on top of her. "Hinata-chan, I'm going to come," grunted Naruto through grit teeth before exploding inside of her. The other one quickly followed suit, erupting inside of her mouth, sending rope after rope of seed down her throat and on her face. Hinata moaned loudly as Naruto's seed filled her up, causing her to feel pleasantly full. Taking a break, she sat on one of the Naruto's lap, still inside of her, and began collecting the ropes of seed she still had on her face. "Delicious, Naruto-kun," said Hinata with a smile as she lewdly lapped at her cum-glazed fingers. "Glad you enjoyed it," replied Naruto with a foxy grin. Suddenly one of Naruto's clones proudly pumped one of the fists into the air and exclaimed, "Round 2. A few hours later. Early evening. Early dinner time. Why don't I take you girls out to dinner? Asked Naruto as he got out of the steamy bathroom, wearing only a towel around his waist. That sounds really nice, Naruto-kun, replied Ayame as she was putting her hair up into a bun. Somewhere fancy, please, replied Ino as she slipped on her leg warmers. I think I'm okay with anywhere as long as it's within Naruto-kun, replied Hinata with a shy blush, despite everything she had done earlier. Anywhere Naruto-sama wants to go, I will go with him, replied Haku politely, doing a small bow. I'm just happy to see you after such a long time, said Anko excitedly with a grin. All right then, let's head to that new restaurant I saw when I got back. I think it was called the Palace, asked Naruto, waiting for everyone to answer. All of the girls seemed to really like that idea as they expressed their answer by all nodding excitedly. Even Hinata seemed excited. Putting on his regular clothes but leaving his trench coat behind, Naruto and the girls quickly left the apartment. Their trip through the urban district was peaceful as no villager was cocky enough to glare at him as they saw what seemed to be 5 kunoichi escorting him. A few were brave enough to stare whilst most of the others did their best to ignore. It only took a moment for them to reach the restaurant, and it was a very fancy restaurant. They made their way in. Good evening, see, began the greeter until she realized who it was, to which she sneered. What the hell are you doing here? Asked the woman with a disgusted look on her, as if she had just eaten something repulsive. Get the hell out of here, demon bra, began the snarky woman before being interrupted when Naruto's eyes turned a sickening red. Fix your damn attitude, thought Naruto angrily before the redness in his eyes dissipated. Good evening, good sir. How many people? Asked the woman once again. 6. Replied Naruto, crossing his arms. Very good. Follow me, said the woman with a bow, before walking off to the booths. Naruto promptly followed, as did the girls. The restaurant seemed to go quiet as all of the customers glared at Naruto. Naruto glared back, of course, his eyes a burning red, causing all of the patrons to go back to chatting friendly with each other. Naruto grit one of his fists in anger but loosened as he felt Anko lean forward and give him a kiss on the neck. They soon reached their booth, sat down and ordered their drinks. These people are terrible, sighed Ino as she twirled her hair with her hand. Makes me disgusted with Konoha, agreed Ayame. Can't wait to kill the lot, said Anko with a grin. Gee, they deserve to die for what they've done to Naruto-kun, said Hinata with a little determination. I take it that you've told them what I plan for in the future, Anko-chan? Asked Naruto, to which Anko nodded. Well, it makes my job easier. The group quickly got their drinks. Anko had her bottle of sake, Ayame, Ino, and Hinata had ordered tea whilst Haku and Naruto simply ordered water. When the waitress finished handing out their beverages, she pulled out a notepad. The group ordered their food before they sent the waitress off. So, Naruto-kun, did you hear? The Chunin exams are happening soon, said Anko, resting her chin on her hand. Oh, my instructor didn't tell me anything about the Chunin exams, replied Naruto with one raised eyebrow. Yes, I believe it's happening next month, said Anko. That gives me plenty time to train, replied Naruto. It won't be long now. Hey, Naruto-kun, I have a question, said Ino, entering the conversation. Yes, Ino-chan, replied Naruto. I know you're crazy strong, Naruto-kun, but how do you expect to take on Konoha? Asked Ino hesitantly. Don't worry, Ino-chan. I've got a plan. I'll tell you guys about it after we eat, replied Naruto with a reassuring smile. All right, don't worry, Ino-chan, said Hinata, placing a hand on Ino's shoulder. All right, repeated Ino. Naruto-sama, I'm hungry, said Haku, gingerly placing one of her hands on her toned stomach. Right as she said that, the waitress returned, holding everyone's entrees. With a quick, "Itadakimasu," Haku eagerly dug in, immediately spooning a huge portion of her dish into her mouth and swallowing. That lack of gag reflex is really something to see, thought Naruto before saying his own, "Itadakimasu," and beginning on his own plate. The group happily ate their food. Yes, it was a very fine restaurant, serving delicious food. It wasn't long before everyone had finished their food. Once they had finished, Naruto called for the waitress to get their bill. Rather than paying for the bill, he simply made the waitress put their meal on the house, and with that done, they walked out of the restaurant. "Ah, I'm so pleasantly stuffed," sighed Ayame in delight as she walked down the patio steps. It was very nice," said Hinata happily. "Glad you took us here, Naruto-kun," added Ino with a grin. "Yes, thank you for the meal, Naruto-sama," said Haku politely. "No problem. I'm just glad that you're all happy," replied Naruto with a foxy grin. Naruto turned his head away from the girls when he heard the trademark steps of elitism. The moment he turned his head, he saw Sasuke stomping up to him. The Uchiha looked envious, smug and a little bit pissed off. Naruto could only raise an eyebrow at this. "Uchiha," said Yoko quietly with a hint of anger. "What the hell are you doing here, Dobi? This district is for the wealthy," scowled Sasuke as he tried standing in the most intimidating pose he could muster, which wasn't much considering Naruto was quite taller than him. "I never heard of a district in Konoha that is just for the wealthy. Now if you don't mind, I have to escort these ladies home," replied Naruto, his voice devoid of the happiness he held early, rather it had been filled with a bit of malice and seriousness. "Why are you women hanging out with the Dobi? Why don't you walk with me? After all, I'm an Uchiha," said Sasuke with a disgustingly cocky grin. "Don't make me sick. I may have had a crush on you back in the academy, but I've changed." "Naruto-kun is way better than you," defended Ino before wrapping herself around Naruto's arm, causing Sasuke to scowl. "Tch, not like you are strong anyways," muttered Sasuke under his breath before turning to Anko. You look strong. Why the hell are you hanging out with this loser? Why don't you come with me?" "Not even if I was drunk out of my mind, would I ever say yes to that question," said Anko stoically. Fine. Listen, Dobi, you don't deserve these women. I'll make sure they're taken away from you," sneered Sasuke, pointing an accusing finger at Naruto before pointing to the girls, "and you'll regret declining me, Sasuke Uchiha." "Big words, for a small man," insulted Naruto, to which Sasuke nearly fumed. "Mark my words, Dobi, you'll regret saying that. No one says that to an Uchiha." With that said, Sasuke stomped off, leaving a group of irritated people behind. "What an asshole," said Ino. "Agreed," said Haku. "All right, now that that's over with, let's head home and I can tell you what exactly we'll be doing for the next month," instructed Naruto, to which everyone nodded. Back at Anko's apartment, Naruto stood in front of the couch as all the girls sat down patiently, waiting for him to tell them his instructions. Naruto, on the other hand, was listening to the instructions Yoko was giving him. It only took a moment before he began speaking. "Now, as most of you know, I am the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails," began Naruto, crossing his arms, "the Kyubi, being as generous as it is, has gifted me with multiple powerful Kekkei Genkei. That's the reason why I was able to control those people at the restaurant. My plan of destroying Konoha is simple, but it will take a long time. I plan on taking Konoha just a few weeks after the Chunin exams, when security will be more lax since all of the foreign ninja will have had left by then, and the guards will surely need time to recover," continued Naruto. "I have a new Kekkei Genkei that will be emerging, and it'll give me the abilities to transfer a part of the Kyubi's power into all of you. What are the effects of you doing that? Asked Anko. Just a few physical changes, but they will be easily hidden behind the Genkai Keke, Akuma Fakasue, that you will receive once you go through the process, replied Naruto, to which Anko nodded. Ayame-chan, while I can give you immense power, since you have no ninja training, I don't want you to be anywhere near us when the fight starts. I'm just looking out for your safety, added Naruto, to which Ayame gave a small, understanding sigh. The rest of his instructions came out clearly and everyone agreed, adding in their own little pieces and suggestions, to which Naruto filed away for later analysis. It only took another 30 minutes until everyone was happy with the plan, not that they were unsatisfied with what Naruto had in mind. They wouldn't say it, but they were very glad that Naruto was an open-minded person. For this month we will be mostly going through the usual routine, so don't act suspicious. Simply act like yourself, said Naruto, to which everyone nodded. Now, since the night is still young, anyone want to play some card games? It was the very next day. The weather was mild with just a gentle breeze that caused the trees to sway. Naruto was sitting at Ichiraku's ramen, wearing his usual attire, a black trench coat and a vest. Bowl after bowl, he ate his ramen and Chuki kept them coming. The old man couldn't help but notice how Naruto wasn't eating like he used to. Gone were the days Naruto would devour his noodles as if he hadn't eaten in weeks, and in return was a new Naruto that ate quickly yet politely, with no noise and no mess. Chuki was a simple man and did not enjoy getting into complicated things, so he decided not to ask but to simply keep cooking noodles for Naruto. You know, thanks to you, I'm addicted to ramen, sighed Yoko. You're welcome, replied Naruto, to which Yoko couldn't help but grin. Your ramen is delicious as always, complimented Naruto with a small smile, to which Chuki beamed with pride. Well, thank you Naruto-kun. I'm glad you enjoyed it, replied Chuki. So, how is Ayame-chan doing? Asked Naruto. She's doing very well. I think she's gotten a lot happier for some reason. I caught her humming this morning while getting ready. Usually it takes me forever to get her to wake up, said Chuki with a warm smile. That's good, replied Naruto with an equally warm smile. Well, thank you very much for this meal, thanked Naruto before paying the bill. Thank you, Naruto-kun. See you next time, said Chuki, waving him goodbye. See you next time, replied Naruto, waving back, before taking his leave. Naruto was casually making his way through the urban district. Most of the villagers, except for the children, glared at him. They were a little taken aback when he stopped in the middle of the dirt path. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment before opening them, unleashing a sickly aura around him, causing most of the villagers to back away in fear. When he continued walking, no one dared to glare at him. He only made a few more steps forward before he was stopped by a seemingly random Anbu. Yes, what is it? Asked Naruto with a quirked eyebrow. Uzumaki Naruto, you have been called upon by the council. I am to escort you there, replied the Anbu officer in a monotone voice, devoid of bias. Naruto took notice to the self-righteous glares of all the villagers around him. It disgusted him. He burned faces into his mind of those who held the twisted grin around him. They were to be the first to die by his hand when he destroyed this place. All right then, take me to the council, replied Naruto, holding back a wave of killer intent. With a nod, the Anbu placed a gloved hand on Naruto's shoulder and off they went, disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Before the scary council, in the council room. The council room was huge. As Naruto was escorted into the main room, his steps echoed, bouncing off the round surfaces. He saw the myriad of guards standing solemnly around him. The visible security was more for intimidation than actual security, as Naruto knew there were more guards hidden away in the shadows. When he approached the door, it was pulled open by two guards, each one wearing an animal mask. Soon, what was behind the doors was revealed. "Dun dun dun," said Yoko dramatically. An army of glares stared deeply into him as he stepped into the room. On one side of the large room was a bunch of civilians sitting respectfully on their thin floor cushions. On the other side, sat the clan leaders, sitting on fluffier floor cushions. In the middle of the far end of the room was an intimidating desk, and behind it sat the Hokage and his two advisors, Mitokado Homura, Udatane Kaharu and Shimura Danzo. I remember them. They were lapdogs to the majority vote if my memory serves me well, snarled Yoko. Be careful around that Danzo fellow, he's got secrets. Taking a closer look around the room, Naruto saw that Anko, Ayame, Hinata, Ino and Haku were there. Naruto also spied out the major clan leaders. The leader of the Hyuga clan, Hiashi Hyuga, was staring daggers at him. The leader of the Yamanaka clan, Inoichi Yamanaka, was also staring daggers at him. The leader of the Inazaka clan, Sume Inazaka, was eyeing him, measuring his worth with a curious look on her face. Naruto-kun. What's going on? Peeped Hinata in slight panic. Yeah, Naruto-kun, explain this, said Ino with a frustrated pout. Don't worry, Hinata-chan, Ino-chan, it'll be fine, replied Naruto with a reassuring smile. Hinata was about to say something else but was stopped as she felt a warm hand placed on her shoulder by Anko. She looked up and Anko gave her a confident smile, causing her to calm down. Hinata turned back and gave Naruto a nod before she, Ino and Anko made their way to their spots. The council meeting will begin, announced one of the guards loudly enough so that everyone could hear, and in reply, everyone quieted down. All right, Naruto-kun, please come before the council, said Sarutobi in a formal manner, to which Naruto nodded politely. Okay, Naruto-kun, it has come to the village's attention that you have multiple women of which you engage with, began Sarutobi. According to an old village law, you may be challenged, and if you lose, you will lose the right to engage with those women. Such barbaric laws. One can't stop love by simply splitting people apart, scowled Yoko. While this law usually applies to clan leaders, this is a raid situation as a clan leader has challenged you, finished Sarutobi. And who would this clan leader be? Asked Naruto, who was thinking of Hiashi Hyuga or Inoichi Yamanaka. The clan leader who challenged you is Uchiha Sasuke, replied Sarutobi, motioning for the doors to open. The heavy sound of the doors grinding against the floor echoed throughout the council room as it opened, revealing Uchiha Sasuke in all his glory. He wore what would appear to be Uchiha combat apparel with multiple pouches full of shuriken and kunai. He also had the most self-righteous smirk known to man smeared on his face. Naruto could only look back at Hokage with a dull look of disbelief. Pardon my rudeness, Hokage-sama, but does one man really make a clan? Asked Naruto as respectfully as he can. How dare you insult the Uchiha? Screamed one of the civilians, causing an onslaught of insults to be thrown at Naruto. You're nothing compared to Uchiha Sasuke. You're just jealous of his power. Little shit, how dare you say that? Disgusting creatures, the lot of them should respect your sacrifice, scoffed Yoko quietly. With that last comment, Hokage slammed his fist loudly on to his desk, silencing everyone. If looks could kill, everyone in the room would be barely clinging on to life. All of the civilians held their breath in fear as the Hokage began speaking. This is a respectable council, and I will not have any of you speak out at any given moment without my permission, commanded Sarutobi with a menacing tone, causing all of the civilians to nod frantically. All right, Naruto-kun. No, one man does not make a clan, but with Uchiha Sasuke it is different. He is currently under the Clan Revival Act, where he is required to take multiple wives to repopulate the Uchiha clan, replied Sarutobi, prompting Sasuke to laugh. Yeah, Dobi, It's village law that allows me to take on multiple wives, unlike you. Why don't you save me the trouble and hand your women to me right now? Asked Sasuke condescendingly. No way. I wouldn't touch you even if you threatened to kill me, shouted Ino from her spot in the room, causing Sasuke to scowl at her. Why yeah, and no way I'll let you have me, said Hinata in the loudest and most intimidating voice she could muster. Quiet, replied one of the guards in an intimidating tone, silencing Ino and Hinata. No, Sasuke, I accept your challenge. We'll fight as soon as you want, replied Naruto in a monotone voice. Then we'll fight right now, said Sasuke, pissed off because he didn't get the response he wanted. All right, let's get this over with, replied Naruto with an uninterested sigh, pissing off Sasuke even further. Acting so calm right now, only to break under my strength later, huh, Dobi? Began Sasuke with a self-righteous smirk. Let's see how you're like after I crush you under my boot. Yeah, right, Konoha Arena. The arena itself was old, unused for many years, as most shinobi who broke laws were either too afraid to fight to the death or escaped and became missing nin. Back then it would have been used by ninja who wanted to fight for their opinions. Now it lays as a forgotten part of the village. Naruto stood on his side of the ring. The bottom of his trench coat swayed gently in the wind. Sasuke stood on the other side, with his usual smirk on his face. Naruto would be sure to wipe it off his face. Uchiha, 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 chanted the crowd, like an army of robots programmed to sound enthusiastic. Go Sasuke-kun, I believe in you, I know you can beat Naruto Baka, cheered Sakura from the audience stands. Don't listen to that bitch. Kick that Uchiha's, hollered Anko as she pumped her fist in the air. Besides the loud screeching from Sakura and the overly loud cheer from Anko, all of the other voices melded together. Naruto could easily pick out Anko, Ayame, Ino, Hinata and Haku in the audience. He gave them a nod and a smile before he returned his attention to the obnoxious Uchiha. Are you ready, Dobi? Are you ready to kneel before me? Asked Sasuke cockily, surprising Sakura with his choice of words. Kneel, isn't that a bit harsh, just for a spar? Thought Sakura out loud, catching the attention of Haku. Excuse me, but are you the Sakura-san that Naruto speaks of? Asked Haku, to which Sakura nodded. Yeah, that's me, what is it? Replied Sakura. Do you know why this duel is being fought? Asked Haku, to which Sakura shook her head. No. That person, Uchiha Sasuke, wants to separate Naruto-sama from the women who love him, said Haku in her usual solemn voice. You love Naruto-kun? Asked Sakura, her eyes widening in surprise. Yes, very much so, replied Haku. Oh, I see, said Sakura, returning her attention to the arena. Do you know how Naruto-sama got to where he is? As a shinobi? Asked Haku, to which Sakura shook her again. No. Naruto-sama was an orphan. I am sure you know this, said Haku. Yes, I know that, replied Sakura. What you don't know about Naruto-sama's childhood was that he was neglected. The villagers would beat him and prohibit him from buying necessities from their stores, said Haku, to which Sakura gasped in worry. Why would they do this? Asked Sakura. Because Naruto-sama holds the Kyubi, replied Haku. As Haku continued telling Sakura of the hardships that Naruto had to endure when he was younger, Sakura could feel tears of sympathy well in her eyes. She held back her tears as she took a moment to glance at Naruto from her spot. She could feel her heart hurt for him as he came into view. Oh, Naruto-kun, how could they do this? Make this a good show for me. Show them what happens to those who mess with the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, said Yoko, to which Naruto mentally nodded. Let's just get this over with, said Naruto in response to the Uchiha, repeating what he said earlier, pissing off Sasuke. All right, ready yourselves, ordered the Hokage, who was sitting in the main spectator booth. The fight begins. Began Sarutobi, now. With a smirk, Sasuke began the fight quickly by throwing a flurry of shuriken and kunai. The sharp instruments of death flew through the air and hit true, striking nearly every vital point of Naruto except for his head. The body of Naruto stumbled backwards before collapsing onto the ground before a puddle of blood began pooling around him. How could Sasuke-kun do such a thing? Asked the panicking Sakura to one in particular, causing Haku to place a hand on her shoulder. Keep watching, instructed Haku, to which Sakura nodded, with a few tears rolling down her cheeks. Ha, a fitting end for something like you, said Sasuke smugly. Sasuke turned around to face the Hokage until he heard a couple of gasps from the audience, including Sakura. He turned back around to see a horrific scene. Naruto stood limply, blood oozed from multiple wounds and his eyes glowed a sickly red. It was like staring into the eyes of a Shinigami. All of the audience widened their eyes at the gruesome scene, including Sakura. How is Naruto-kun still alive? Barely felt a thing, said Naruto with a menacing grin, just before he began pulling out each kunai and shuriken with a sickly squelch sound. His wounds healed quickly after. How are you not dead? Asked Sasuke in disgust and fear. Not going to tell you, replied Naruto before he disappeared from sight, causing Sasuke to panic and for all the shinobi in the audience to raise their eyebrows. Sasuke whirled around wildly, trying to pinpoint where Naruto had disappeared to. It was a wasted effort as all of a sudden, a devastating attack sent him flying into the wall, sending dust into the air and leaving cracks on the wall. Naruto quickly materialized in the center afterwards. Still think you can beat me? Asked Naruto with a foxy grin, mocking Sasuke. Why, you bastard, coughed Sasuke, before activating his Sharingan. Now you've done it. With renewed vigor, Sasuke sprung up and charged at Naruto. The Uchiha took out a kunai from his pouch and came at Naruto with murderous intent. Within seconds, Sasuke was upon Naruto, bringing his kunai down, only to be taken completely by surprise as Naruto countered with a devastating elbow to the face, causing a crunching sound to escape the side of his head. The kunai he held flew out of his hand and hit the ground with a thud. How did my Sharingan not see that? Gotta be more careful if you want to be a shinobi, Uchiha Sasuke, taunted Naruto before extending his arm, grabbing onto Sasuke's hair and slamming him into the ground. Sasuke's face connected with the face with a sick crunch, but within moments he was back up, cradling a broken nose with his left hand. Blood oozed between his fingers as she swore loudly in pain. Naruto gave him a moment to think about what he was going to do next. Within a few seconds, Sasuke's attention was directed back at Naruto. The Uchiha glared with all the hatred he could muster at the blonde ninja. You can give up now. I wouldn't want to hurt the famed Uchiha Sasuke, said Naruto sarcastically, causing Sasuke to scream in rage. How dare you speak that way to me? Roared Sasuke in a desperate anger. I am Uchiha Sasuke, the Uchiha clan leader. You're just a pathetic orphan that somehow managed to become a ninja. There's no way you can possibly defeat me, screamed Sasuke, losing his cool, causing Naruto to visibly stiffen. You know, Sasuke, I thought that deep down, somewhere in you, was some good. I thought that we could relate to each other since we both know what it is like to be alone, but I was clearly wrong, replied Naruto in a dark, menacing voice. Immediately after saying that, Naruto spun around and delivered a devastating kick to the side of Sasuke's neck, sending him flying into the wall. The civilian audience could only see Sasuke disappear and appear by the now damaged wall, whilst the shinobi within the crowd could just barely make out the speed of which Sasuke was kicked into the wall. The crowd watched in shock as they realized that Sasuke was not getting up. I guess I win, said Naruto as he looked up at Sarutobi. Within seconds, a group of medic nin came in and carried the injured Uchiha out of the arena. The crowd took a moment to comprehend what had just happened. Their Uchiha Sasuke had just been defeated by the Academy's dead last. Things like this didn't just happen. The crowd reacted by doing the only thing they could think of. They started jeering. You cheating little shit. Yeah, there is no way a dead last like you could have had so much power. Boo. The insults kept coming until the sound of Anko's shouting overpowered all of them. You condescending. How could you be booing someone who clearly won the fight fair and square? Yelled Anko with all her might, unleashing a powerful amount of killer intent, silencing the crowd and causing them to quiver in their seats. Come on, Naruto-kun. Let's get out of here and get some dango, continued Anko, to which Naruto replied, all right. Dango shop. Naruto sipped patiently on his tea as he watched Anko happily devour her delicious dessert dumplings. He smiled a little at Anko's ecstatic grin as the empty plates of dango began piling around her. None of the other patrons bothered them as they were all brainwashed by his Akuma Fakasue. Thanks, Naruto-kun. I don't usually eat this much, but I find myself really hungry these days, said Anko with a mouthful of dango, giving her an adorable full-cheek look. Hehehehe, snickered Yoko quietly. You're welcome, Anko-chan. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, replied Naruto with a smile. You really kicked that Uchiha Sasuke's back there, complimented Anko. I was very impressed. Thanks, Anko-chan. I think it was about time he shown how weak he really was, replied Naruto. Kami, Naruto-kun, seeing you beat him so easily really turned me, began Anko breathlessly, only to be interrupted as the door opened, revealing Haku and Sakura. Hello, Haku-chan, Sakura-chan. What brings you here? Asked Naruto with a quirked eyebrow. Sakura-san has something to tell you, Naruto-sama, replied Haku in her usual polite tone. What is it, Sakura-chan? Asked Naruto. Naruto-kun, can I tell you in private? Asked Sakura sheepishly. Oh, what's this now? Asked Yoko amusingly. Sure, replied Naruto as he put on his trench coat. Anko's apartment. They arrived at Anko's apartment relatively quickly. When they entered, Naruto guided Sakura to the living room and sat her down on the couch. Naruto went into the kitchen and came back out with 2 cups of hot tea. Sakura gratefully took the tea with a small, thank you. So, what is it that you wanted to tell me? Asked Naruto curiously. It's just that I want to apologize, began Sakura. I've been a terrible person. What is this about? Asked Naruto with a quirked eyebrow. Well, back then at the arena, I had a talk with one of your girlfriends, Haku-san, began Sakura, holding back a small sob. She told me about your past and how horrible it was. Now I feel like a terrible person, and that is why I came to apologize to you. Her apology is not good enough. You may not remember the things she has done to you, but I do, said Yoko with an angry snarl. What do you suggest I do? Asked Naruto with a mischievous grin. Let's punish her a little, snickered Yoko, her grin matching Naruto's. Well, Sakura-chan, you've done harm to me and I think it's only fair you fix that harm, began Naruto with a foxy grin. Any ideas on what you can do? I can do your laundry for a week, suggested Sakura, poking her fingers together just like how Hinata would if she was nervous. Out of all the things in the world, she chose laundry. Giggled Yoko, causing Naruto to mentally smile. Are you sure you can't think of other things? Asked Naruto with a sinister grin on his face, his eyes briefly flashing a sickly red. Yes I can, Naruto-kun, replied Sakura as her eyes began fogging up with an intense lust, her hands beginning to drift along her petite. Then go on with it, said Naruto as Sakura began unbuckling his belt. With eagerness Naruto had not seen in Sakura, Not even when she was chasing after Sasuke, she happily pulled down his pants, getting smacked in the face by this thick manhood in the process. Her cheeks flushed, but she kept on going as they wrapped both of her soft, delicate hands around this hardened length. "Kami, it's so hot in my hands," said Sakura breathlessly as she slowly began stroking his length. Sakura licked her lips sensually before leaning in and engulfing the head of Naruto's manhood into her mouth. She sucked gently as she continued massaging Naruto's thick length. "Not good enough. Make her choke on it," said Yoko in an irritated voice, prompting Naruto to give her a mental nod. Naruto reached a hand out and began running his hands through Sakura's silky, pink hair. His fingers gently massaged her scalp, eliciting a soft moan from the pink-haired beauty. Then, he began forcing her head down. Her eyes went wide as his reached the back of her throat and beyond. She gagged loudly as her lips touched the base of his thick length. "Too much," thought Sakura as her eyes rolled back into her head. "You're not going to get an apology from me if you don't give it your all," scolded Naruto as he began thrusting up into Sakura's mouth. Sakura's throat wrapped tightly around Naruto's length. Like velvet cast in iron, Naruto swore he could get addicted to this sensation. He watched as tears began building up in Sakura's eyes, and listened as Sakura periodically gagged every time his slid down her throat. This only prompted him to become more violent with his thrusts as he her mouth. "You deserve this," growled Naruto, causing Sakura to gasp at his words. "Kami, why does this feel so good? MMPH. MMGPH. MMPH, moaned Sakura as she began feeling a strange wave of satisfaction hit her from having her skull. Naruto grunted as Sakura began using her tongue to stroke the underside of his. The unique texture of Sakura's throat rubbed against the sensitive parts of his length, giving him immense amounts of pleasure. Naruto could feel his seed build up as he continued thrusting his into Sakura's mouth. "Sakura-chan, I'm gonna come," groaned Naruto just before exploding inside Sakura's throat. Hot, white seed erupted inside Sakura's mouth, painting the inside of her mouth and throat white. Naruto's cum kept on coming as Sakura found herself having to gulp down wave after wave of his seed. Not that she minded, of course, as she happily swallowed. It only took her a moment to recuperate as she pulled her face off of his, and after that she gave him a winning smile. "Kami, I love his seed. I deserved that," agreed Sakura with a blush. "Sakura-chan, get on your knees," said Naruto in a sultry voice, prompting a shy nod from Sakura. Sakura obeyed and quickly got on her hands and knees. She let out a small squeak as Naruto picked her up and placed her onto her lap. His hard member pressed into her stomach and she had to suppress a giggle. "What are you doing, Naruto-kun?" asked Sakura a little playfully. "Carrying out your punishment," replied Naruto before roughly pulling off Sakura's shorts and panties, revealing her tight. "What punishment would that be?" cooed Sakura. "This," replied Naruto before bringing his hand down quickly and slapping Sakura across the. "Ah," squeaked Sakura, biting her lower lip in response to the pain. Naruto didn't give Sakura time to recover as he brought his hand down once more, this time harder, causing the sound of flesh slapping against flesh to echo around in the room. Again and again, he brought his hand down, and with every hit, Sakura felt herself get wetter and wetter. She could already feel the bruises form on her tortured rear. "Don't forget, Sakura-chan. You deserve this," said Naruto as he continued spanking Sakura. "I deserve this," repeated Sakura breathlessly, biting her lip immediately afterwards. "Kami, it hurts so good," moaned Sakura quietly. By now, a puddle of Sakura's love nectar had pooled on Naruto's lap and the couch. Her was red with hand prints and swollen. With each painful slap, a flood of endorphins flooded her brain, causing her to moan loudly. "I deserve this, I deserve this, I deserve this," thought Sakura lewdly as her orgasm drew closer and closer. I deserve this, screamed Sakura in pure bliss as she climaxed, squirting her love juices all over Naruto's lap. Single quote. Kami, I'm so perverted. Coming from getting spanked, Sakura gasped loudly as she recovered slowly from her destructive orgasm. Her mouth hanged loosely as she rested on Naruto's lap. The smell of her unique love juices lingered in the room and it only made her arousal grow. Spank me more, Naruto-kun, moaned Sakura softly as she struggled to remain coherent. Maybe next time. I want to move on to the main course right now, said Naruto huskily, massaging Sakura's back with his hand. Why you're gonna have to carry me? I'm too sore, replied Sakura lazily, with a dreamy smile. Can do, said Naruto as he pulled off both of their shirts. Sakura yelped as she felt Naruto lift her up in his strong arms, positioning her onto his lap so that his large member was directly beneath her glistening, pink slit. She gulped as she realized his thick length was going to enter her tight cunt. The thought was equally arousing as it was terrifying. Kami, Naruto-kun, put it in already, said Sakura lustfully, moaning at the end to show her anticipation. Gladly, replied Naruto before positioning the head of his manhood directly underneath her wet entrance. The pink-haired maiden gasped loudly as Naruto's thick length began entering her. The sensation of her love canal stretching accommodate Naruto's large member was immense, causing Sakura to bite her lower lip. She let out a small squeak as Naruto pushed deeper and deeper into her, gliding his thick length against her silk walls. Surprisingly, the pain was minimal as she was well lubricated. Naruto-kun, you're so big, cried Sakura in a mix of pleasure and pain. At long last, Naruto was fully sheathed within Sakura's tight folds. His head kissed at the opening of her womb and it was an immensely satisfying feeling. Sakura placed a hand on her stomach and gasped as she felt a hard bump. I can feel you in my belly, Naruto-kun, said Sakura in disbelief. Naruto didn't reply but simply began moving. She gasped loudly as she felt him lift her up so that only the tip remained inside of her slit. She then proceeded to moan loudly as he slid back in, rubbing the inside of her love canal in all the right ways. Kami, Naru, began Sakura only to get interrupted as Naruto wrapped an arm around her neck. Shut up and take it, growled Naruto, prompting Sakura to nod. Sakura tried her best to hold back her yelps and moans by biting her lip as Naruto began thrusting into her. His hips moved like a piston, and with each thrust, he slid into her harder and faster. Sakura could see stars as she lost herself in the overwhelming pleasure. MMPH, 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 moaned Sakura through her bit lip, spurring Naruto to increase the power behind his thrusts. Naruto's grip around Sakura's neck tightened, causing her jaw to lock as she grit her teeth. While uncomfortable, it only drew her orgasm closer until she could hold on no more. With a sharp intake of breath, Sakura climaxed, her love juices spraying all over the ground and Naruto's. Her orgasm was extended as Naruto kept going, ramming his thick length into her tight slit. Kami, I'm getting off from being choked, thought Sakura as she felt her second orgasm approaching. Within a second of that thought, Sakura arched her back in bliss as a second orgasm rippled through her petite body. Small droplets of sweat coated her body, causing the light to reflect off of it. The lack of oxygen was making her feel light and it only made the pleasure she felt so much more intense. I'm going to break. And break she did. Her mind shattered as her third orgasm hit her. Her eyes rolled back into her head and her tongue lolled out of her mouth. All she could focus on was Naruto. The sensation of Naruto's tensed muscles on her back. The sensation of his strong hands on the sides of her waist and the sensation of his thick length rubbing up against every nook and cranny in her slit. It was all too much for the inexperienced girl. Naruto-kun, 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 repeated Sakura's mind. Sakura-chan, I'm going to come, grunted Naruto through grit teeth as his thrusts became erratic. Oh, Kami, I want your babies, Naruto-kun, moaned Sakura quietly, finally unable to hold back from talking. With one last powerful thrust, Naruto climaxed. His hot seed filling Sakura's womb to the brim. Sakura had her back arched and her mouth open in a silent scream. She was going to get pregnant with Naruto's child and the thoughts of it filled her with happiness. Kami, this comfortable fullness. I can't get this feeling from anyone but Naruto-kun. Naruto let Sakura recuperate for a moment before sliding out of her. Right after that, thick trails of cum oozed out of her, onto the couch. It was going to be terrible to get the stains off, but he didn't care. He gently lifted the exhausted pink-haired goddess and carried her on to the bed where he tucked her in. He then proceeded to pull out a spare pair of clothes from the closet. He was just about to leave when, Naruto-kun, can you stay with me? Asked Sakura with a hazy smile on her face. Sorry, Sakura-chan, but I have to follow my training schedule and that council meeting already wasted half of the time I have, replied Naruto politely. But, Naruto-kun, you can't just have your way with me and not take responsibility, said Sakura with a pout. Might as well use this time to reinforce the idea of you being a good guy in her head, suggested Yoko, to which Naruto mentally nodded. All right, just for you though, replied Naruto, before taking off his clothes and climbing into the bed. He, giggled Sakura happily as she pulled Naruto close, wrapping her arms around him and planting her face into his neck. The birds sang gently outside on the windowsill as the sun sat comfortably in the sky. Right beside the windowsill, inside the apartment, on the bed laid Naruto and Sakura. The pink-haired girl slept happily, clinging on to Naruto, with her arms and legs wrapped around him. Naruto, on the other hand, was very much awake. He had woken up a moment earlier, and when he had raised a hand to run through his hair he realized that there were two protrusions on the top of his head. If you're wondering what those are, they are the fox ears that I said will grow on you, explained Yoko, prompting Naruto to nod in response. Now that they have sprouted, how fast will it take for my transformation to be completed? Asked Naruto. Your body has already accepted the changes I have created, and since you are still in your early teens, growth will come very quickly. In fact, I take it you only have a week or two until you will be able to use your new powers, but it will take longer than that for you to use them fully, replied Yoko clearly. That's good. The Chunin exams are coming soon and I want to be able to convert my women as soon as possible, said Naruto. Don't worry. I'll make sure your powers are ready to be used as quickly as I can. You'll soon have the raw power to challenge even the Hokage, and with your women by your side with the same set of powers, taking Konoha down will be easy, reassured Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. I understand, Yoko-chan. I'll make sure you get a good show once all the killing begins, replied Naruto confidently, to which Yoko smiled in response. I'm sure you will, Kit. I'm sure you will, said Yoko. I have a plan today. You still remember Anko's friends? I'll introduce myself to them and hopefully I can get them on my side before the Chunin exams, explained Naruto, to which Yoko nodded. Always good to see how ambitious my Kit is. I have no need for beta males, replied Yoko. Yoko-chan, I've been wondering. Why is it that I require a harem to be with you? Asked Naruto, to which Yoko sighed. This will take a while, Kit, but allow me to explain, began Yoko. As you know, there are 9 Biju left in the world. Yes, nodded Naruto. What you don't know was that we all were once leaders of powerful armies. While our culture was centered on war, nothing more than a skirmish would ever break out since we all feared the consequences of a full-on war, continued Yoko, taking a breath, it was relatively peaceful until Shukaku, the leader of the Tanuki, went mad. How did he go crazy? Asked Naruto. In a particularly violent skirmish, Shukaku's son was killed by Isobu. It was believed he was driven mad by the sight of his son being torn apart in front of him, but it's up to speculation, replied Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. Shukaku declared war on Isobu and attacked them immediately right afterwards. Isobu's forces were decimated as they were unprepared for the zeal of which Shukaku's forces attacked. Isobu quickly sought out the help of the other Biju, including me. Matabi, Son Goku and Kokuo quickly joined the side of Isobu while Seiken, Chome and Gyuki joined Shukaku. I had refused to join as I had no interest in the war. What happened next? Asked Naruto. The battles reigned for a few years, each side slowly eating away at the rest while my people grew stronger and stronger. Near the end of the war, the entire population of my kin was equal to the population of all the other 8 Biju's people combined, began Yoko, then turning a bit crestfallen as she continued, while Shukaku was insane, he was brilliant. You see, I was different back then. I was not the noble creature as you see now, no, I was a savage just like the rest of them. The reason why I had not joined the war was because I knew I could take them all out once they had all whittled each other. I was a fool to believe that none of the other 8 Biju would figure it out. Take your time, I can tell it's difficult, recalling all these memories, said Naruto in a soothing voice, to which Yoko nodded. By some miracle, Shukaku was able to rally all of the other Biju against me, telling them that if they didn't attack me first, they would all be destroyed by me. He was right. The 8 Bijus and their army plowed through my territory, killing anyone that stood in their way. They had surrounded my fortress. I stood tall, knowing that the only kin I had left were depending on me within that fortress, said Yoko, suppressing a sniffle. I was the most powerful of the Biju and I made quick work of their forces. They were fools to have brought their entire army, thinking they could beat me. I slaughtered them. In my bloodlust I completely forgot of my kin, and when I had returned they were dead, murdered by the other Biju. What did you do with the other Biju? Asked Naruto. I was enraged. I hunted them down. They were still grouped together, expecting their armies to regroup with them. I made myself known, howling at them. They turned to me and realization kicked in. I attacked first, slamming into them, digging my teeth into their flesh. I ignored my own pain and focused entirely on killing them all. The battle shook the ground around us, creating mountains, leveling forests. At the end, we were all exhausted but alive. My bloodlust subsided and I felt numb. They were all surprised when I simply turned around and left. None of them followed me, sighed Yoko. Do you regret not killing them? Asked Naruto. No, I don't regret it. It was at that point I realized that there was no point to it anymore. I had no one left. I was alone for the first time. I spent years wandering the world. I was there when the first shinobi walked the earth. When I was first sealed into a Jinchuriki, I thought, maybe it wouldn't be so bad until I realized that my Jinchuriki only saw me as a tool. I had lost my fire until I was sealed into you, began Yoko. You had really surprised me when you first saw me. You restored the fire I had, and also because you could help me repopulate my race. You see, once your transformation is complete, you will be able to pass on these traits on to your women, and their offspring will always have these traits, explained Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. I'm honored, Yoko-chan. I'm really grateful that you care about me so much, replied Naruto, to which Yoko's cheeks flushed. I'm glad you care about me too, Kit, said Yoko, her lips curved in a warm smile. No problem, replied Naruto. I think you should get your day started, suggested Yoko, to which Naruto nodded in agreement. Leaning over to the side so that he could plant a small kiss on Sakura's cute forehead, he got out of bed. He began his day with a quick shower, followed by a simple breakfast of toast and then got dressed in his usual outfit. He took a look at the clock on the wall. The clock read 6. The only one who would be awake at this time would be Hana Inuzuka, the woman who worked at the vet. Konoha Veterinary. Goodbye. Please make sure that he gets lots of rest, okay? Said Hana as she waved her patient's owner goodbye. Okie dokie, Hana-san. Replied the girl before opening the door. Just as the girl walked up, Naruto came in. Dressed in his dark gray trench coat and with his height, he made for an intimidating figure. What was odd though was the small, injured fox cub he was cradling in his arms. This immediately caught Hana's attention as she rushed over with a new pair of gloves. What happened to him? Asked Hana as she brought the fox cub and Naruto into one of the rooms. I found him after he was thrown into a wall by one overly zealous individual, replied Naruto, his lips curved into a frown. TCH, how dare they harm such a beautiful creature, scoffed Hana as she pulled on her gloves and began examining the injured fox. Don't worry, I'm sure that certain individual is too scared now to ever harm anyone again, replied Naruto with a small, foxy grin to which Hana couldn't help but smile. Good, said Hana as she traced her hand over the fox's belly. It seems like this fox has gotten quite the bruise and a few fractured ribs. I think he'll have to stay at my clinic for a while, said Hana as she looked thoughtfully at the fox cub. Don't worry, as long as he gets better, replied Naruto, to which Hana nodded. With the help of a few powerful healing herbs and an extensive amount of bandages, the fox was then able to move on his own. With a small mew, the fox licked Naruto's hand affectionately. I think he likes you, said Hana with a warm smile as she watched Naruto pet the fox gently. I think he does, replied Naruto with a small smile. Seeing that the fox was now better than it was before, Hana took a moment to take her gloves and rub her eyes. Naruto took note of her tired look and easily made a plan in his head. Hey, Hana-san, you look really tired. Have you been sleeping well lately? Asked Naruto, his voice concerned. Oh, is it that obvious? I haven't slept for a while. My shift ends in a few minutes, replied Hana as she rubbed the back of her head, her expression slightly embarrassed. She works hard, huh? Means she probably does not have enough time for personal things, said Yoko, to which Naruto mentally nodded. Hey, Hana-san, do you ever have any time for yourself? Asked Naruto, his eyebrow quirked. No, not much time at all. I am either working here, eating or sleeping, replied Hana tiredly. People need fun in their life. Ask her out on a date, suggested Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. Hey, Hana-san, why don't you go out with me? We can have some fun, asked Naruto, to which Hana raised an eyebrow. Well, that was unexpected. He's bold though, thought Hana. He seems innocent enough, thought Hana as she eyed Naruto. All right, Naruto-kun, I'll take you up on that date, replied Hana, to which Naruto smiled. Don't worry, Hana-chan, you won't regret it, said Naruto, to which Hana blushed slightly. Since it's early, why don't we get some breakfast? Asked Naruto, to which Hana nodded enthusiastically. Where do you want to go then, Naruto-kun? Asked Hana, to which Naruto took a moment to think. At Yakiniku-Q, the grill restaurant. Naruto watched with interest as Hana hungrily devoured slice after slice of meat. The grill in front of them was overflowing with different cuts of beef and pork, but it was quickly disappearing as Hana shoveled bite after bite into her mouth. Naruto, on the other hand, was nibbling on a bowl of seaweed salad. Wow, her appetite is quite impressive, whistled Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. It was with a satisfied sigh that Hana finally finished. She leaned backwards into a more comfortable sitting position as she pushed back the empty bowl in front of her. She looked at Naruto, who had also finished his meal. Ya know, Naruto-kun. You really know how to treat a lady, said Hana with a smile, to which Naruto smiled back. I aim to please, replied Naruto suavely, causing Hana's cheeks to redden slightly. Well, since you're such a gentleman, why don't you escort me home? Asked Hana, to which Naruto nodded. I thought you'd never ask, replied Naruto with a foxy grin, causing Hana's blush to darken. Grabbing his coat as he stood up, he asked for Hana to wait outside so that he could pay the bill. Unbeknownst to her, Naruto had simply used his Kekkei Genkei to trick the waitress into thinking that he had already paid. He didn't care about what the waitress would have to go through after she had realized her mistake. He had planned to kill her, along with everyone else when he destroyed Konoha. Once he was done, he walked out of the restaurant. So, are you ready to go? Asked Hana as she straightened out her shirt. Yes, I'm ready, replied Naruto, taking Hana's hand with his own. Wah, said Hana out loud, before being silenced by the strange, soothing red glow from Naruto's eyes. So, where to? Asked Naruto. My house, I'll lead you there, replied Hana with a smile. All right, said Naruto as he was pulled through the streets by his hand through the streets. As Naruto and Hana walked through the district, they got a few odd stares and hateful glares from the villagers. Hana seemed to not notice as her attention was solely focused on Naruto, while Naruto simply brushed the stares and glares off. Hana's hand felt warm in his, and the sensation made the trip all the way to the Inazaka estate a lot faster. So, Hana-chan, what can you tell me about the Inuzuka? Asked Naruto casually. Well, as you know, we are one of the more powerful clans in Konoha, began Hana. We are famed for raising the best ninja canine and our techniques are based off of canines. I see, replied Naruto. If you want to see the Inuzuka's famed techniques up close, I wouldn't mind showing it to you, offered Hana, to which Naruto nodded enthusiastically. I'd be honored, replied Naruto, to which Hana blushed. I'll show you once we make it to my house, said Hana, to which Naruto nodded. With that said, the two continued their fast walk until they had arrived at the Inazaka's head estate. When they arrived, Naruto saw two guards standing lazily by the gate. When Hana became visible, the two guards immediately improved their posture. Well, at least I now know not to hire Inuzuka for protection, thought Naruto, to which Yoko snickered. The moment they came close, the two guards bared their fangs at Naruto. They thought they looked intimidating, but they didn't. As soon as Hana saw that, she glared at them. That shut them down. With a wave of her hand, the guards opened the gates, allow them in. They walked towards the back, where Naruto spotted multiple training dummies and a sparring area. So, what do you want to see first? Asked Hana, her voice filled with just a bit of pride. It's up to you. I am not entirely familiar with Inuzuka techniques, replied Naruto with an apologetic smile. It's all right, said Hana as she moved towards one of dummies. Stretching her neck out a bit, Hana got on all fours. Blue chakra surrounded her limbs, giving her a soothing blue glow. Naruto noticed that her form seemed to have gone more feral. Her canines enlarged, peeked through her soft lips, and her nails grew into sharp claws. When he looked into her eyes, he could see that her pupils had become slits. That's the Inuzuka technique known as the Shikyaku no Jutsu. It is said that when they are in this form, they gain increased movement speed and faster reaction time. They are also capable of epic feats of strength and agility, explained Yoko, to which Naruto nodded. Suga, growled Hana as she twirled her body, spinning so fast that she became a blur, and with devastating power she ripped the dummy into tiny pieces. Finished with her technique, Hana soon got back up onto 2 feet. She turned to Naruto with a smile. Naruto in turn clapped. That was amazing, complimented Naruto, to which Hana blushed. Don't clap yet, that was just a D-rank technique, replied Hana. Yes, but it was still amazing, said Naruto in turn, causing Hana's blush to darken. Any more techniques you're willing to show me? Asked Naruto. Well, if you show me one of your techniques, I can, replied Hana. Oh, Hana's bedroom. Yes. Hana's moan echoed quietly around her room as she pushed Naruto's face deeper between her delicious thighs. With his masterful tongue, Naruto pleasured the socks off of Hana. Every time Naruto's tongue ran across her, she would squeal lightly and gasp. With his hands, he did his best to massage Hana's inner thighs. He quite liked her thighs, perfectly proportionate to her body and deliciously thick. Cammy, you are so damn good at this, complimented Hana, finishing her sentence off by making more lewd noises. The inside of Hana's sweet honey pot clenched around Naruto's tongue every time he found her G-spot, which was easy for him as his tongue had grown rather long. He would have to thank Yoko later. The taste and smell of Hana's excited love juices only seemed to make the stiffness in his pants all the even more needy, but he held back, preferring to savor the appetizer before diving into the main dish. Naruto-kun, I'm going to come soon, gasped Hana, her eyes hazy with lust and a droplet of saliva rolling out the side of her mouth. Naruto took her words as encouragement to increase the passion of which he did everything, causing Hana to immediately arch her back in pure bliss as he brought her to an explosive orgasm. Her love nectar spurted out of her, showering Naruto's face with her hot passion. To top it off, her thighs immediately clenched around Naruto's head as she held on to him for dear life. Tasty, complimented Naruto, his lips curved into a sultry smirk. Naruto proceeded to separate her thighs, releasing his head from her orgasm death grip. He looked down at Hana, whose face was glistening with a light sheen of sweat. He leaned forward to give her cheek a kiss. This seemed to bring Hana back into reality. When I asked you to show me one of your techniques, I never meant something like this, panted Hana, but I think I prefer this more. A technique for a technique, you said. I think now is the perfect time for you to show me one of yours, replied Naruto, following up what Hana said. Gladly, said Hana with a smirk, her sentence filled with Inuzuka pride. Crawling over to where Naruto was, she pulled off his pants and boxers, eager to match Naruto in prowess. She gasped quietly as she revealed his large, thick length. Quite impressive for someone his age. She took a moment to measure his manhood by wrapping both her hands around it. His length radiated heat, spurring her to lean forward and inhale lightly. Cammy, he smells so masculine, thought Hana, her mind going fuzzy. Watch the teeth, said Naruto with a small grin, eliciting a quiet giggle from Hana. With that said, Hana proceeded to engulf a good half of Naruto's length into her mouth, prompting Naruto to let out a groan. She eagerly ran her tongue around his head and stroked what she could not fit into her mouth with her hand. Her ponytail laid lazily by the side of her head, resting on Naruto's hip. He took this moment to run a hand through Hana's silky hair. Good girl, complimented Naruto, spurring Hana's cheeks to turn a cute shade of red. Naruto was impressed by the broad spectrum of techniques that Hana used. She would switch it up every once in a while, sometimes tilting her head slightly to use the smooth inside of her cheek to massage his or running her tongue against the sensitive underside of the head of his length. While none of these techniques were perfect, they made for a very interesting blowjob. I was expecting Hana to be a lot rougher, thought Naruto, before letting out a quiet grunt. Hana continued to eagerly please Naruto to the best of her abilities. It seemed that Inuzuka produced a lot more saliva than others as Naruto found the inside of Hana's mouth to be amazingly hot and wet. He was now really glad that Anko had told him about Hana. I'm going to come, Hana-chan, warned Naruto, prompting Hana put in more passion into pleasuring Naruto. With a guttural groan, Naruto erupted into Hana's mouth, sending wave after wave of seed down her throat. He painted the inside of her mouth white as he climaxed. Hana eagerly drank down his delicious cum, and Naruto observed quietly in awe as her throat bobbed with each swallow. It seemed Hana found his seed to be delicious, as even when his orgasm had subsided, Hana still had her mouth wrapped around his length, desperate to suck out the last of his cum. "Shall we move on to the main course?" asked Naruto, his voice sultry. A loud, audible pop echoed through the room as Hana pulled off of his still rock-hard length, her eyes wide when she heard what he said. "You can still go?" asked Hana, to which Naruto nodded. "You know, you're more man than most of the Inuzuka I have laid with," complimented Hana, her expression impressed. "Oh," replied Naruto, an eyebrow raised. "Yeah," said Hana as she slowly turned around, laying her head onto her pillow and raising her plump, showing off her tantalizing love canal and puckered star. Guiding his manhood to her slit, he took a moment to tease her by rubbing the head of his length against her opening, gliding it down so that it rubbed against her. He did this a few times, eliciting a couple of mews from Hana. Positioning his manhood at her entrance, he let out a grunt as he slid his length into her. Hana moaned in unison as his glided along the wet walls of her love canal. "MMPH, Kami," moaned Hana as she felt the head of Naruto's give the opening to her womb a gentle kiss. "Hey, Naruto-kun, can you do something for me?" asked Hana. "Yes," replied Naruto. "Can you pull on my hair while you do me?" asked Hana. "Gladly," replied Naruto with a sultry smirk. With that said, Naruto took hold of Hana's ponytail, wrapping it around his hand. He pulled back, eliciting a small moan from Hana. He soon began moving his hips, bringing his length back until only the head was inside of Hana before pushing back in, eliciting another lewd moan from the Inuzuka woman. He soon set off a strong rhythm, creating the sound of flesh slapping against flesh, all the while he held her head back by her hair. "MMPH, ah," moaned Hana, biting her lower lip as she rocked her hips to match Naruto's powerful thrusts. Using as one free hand to steady himself on her hip, he increased the speed and strength of his thrusts, immediately causing Hana's jaw to go slack, letting her tongue loll out as her eyes rolled back in pure bliss. "Naruto-kun, you're incorrigible," wailed Hana, her pressed against the bed, her back arched and droplets of sweat gliding down her spine. "I aim to please," replied Naruto as he gave Hana's ponytail another tug, eliciting a pleasured gasp from the Inuzuka woman. The sounds of their intense love-making echoed across the room. The blankets they laid on had already various darkened spots of sweat. Panting and gasping came from Hana as she was in too much pleasure to say another word. Naruto, on the other hand, only let out an occasional grunt as he continued thrusting into Hana's sweet love canal. "Gonna come," squealed Hana, forcing her words out before her orgasm hit her. And hit her it did. Her love canal clenched tightly around Naruto's member as her orgasm hit her. She began panting like a dog, her tongue lolled to the side as she climaxed. She even lifted one leg off to the side as her love juices spurted from her slit, drenching Naruto's groin and the bed. Naruto followed suit and climaxed with a grunt. His plentiful seed quickly filled up the rest of Hana, filling up her womb to the max. Hana moaned lazily as she felt stomach bloat a bit to make room. "Ooh," moaned Hana as she slumped forward, off of Naruto's length. I think that my lack of sleep has caught up to me," said Hana hazily. "Well, why don't you take a nap? I'll make sure to visit you tomorrow," replied Naruto, to which Hana nodded lazily. "Let me tuck you in," said Naruto as he helped Hana underneath the dirty sheets, putting the pillow under her head. "See ya, Naruto-kun," said Hana before yawning. "Yeah, farewell, Hana-chan," replied Naruto as he began putting his pants back on. At a random cafe, Kurenai Yuhi sat quietly in one of the local cafes. It was way too early to get drunk, so she had settled for drinking some tea at one of the local cafes. She picked at a small slice of fruit cake with a tiny fork. "Why did I order cake?" I hate cake, sighed Kurenai. Oh, wait, it's because I got in a fight with Asuma, thought Kurenai as she stabbed her cake. Just then, Naruto walked in through the front door, prompting the bell to ring. His eyes scanned the entire cafe until he spotted Kurenai sitting alone in one of the corner tables. Before any of the waiters and waitresses could notice him, he already had all of them under his control using his Akuma Focusway. He confidently walked up to Kurenai. "Hey, Kurenai-sensei," greeted Naruto with a foxy grin, causing Kurenai to smile before responding. "Oh, hi, Naruto-kun," replied Kurenai, waving the hand she held her fork with. "What brings you here to this cafe?" asked Kurenai. "Well, actually I was looking for you, Kurenai-sensei," replied Naruto, to which Kurenai raised an eyebrow. "Oh, why is that?" asked Kurenai. "You see, I've been getting interested in Genjutsu recently and I heard that you were called the Genjutsu Mistress," replied Naruto, making sure to mention her title. With chakra levels like him, there's no way his control is good enough for Genjutsu, thought Kurenai. "Really? Most kids these days prefer the flashy techniques from ninjutsu?" asked Kurenai, her voice a little skeptical. "I've always enjoyed pranks and I'm sure that Genjutsu matches my personality," replied Naruto with a foxy grin. "Well, I have time, I'm sure I can teach you a few things," said Kurenai, to which Naruto nodded. "Let's head to one of the training grounds," suggested Kurenai, to which Naruto nodded once again. One of the many training grounds around Konoha. The training ground they went to had a lot of trees. Tall, giant trees that looked ancient but strong. The leaves blew softly in the wind and Naruto could pick out the small sound of all the animals. He really enjoyed his enhanced hearing in situations like these, but it was a nightmare when he was in louder areas. He followed Kurenai until she had found a suitable spot to teach him. "So, what do you know about Genjutsu?" asked Kurenai. "Well, I know that it has to do with illusions," lied Naruto, saying only the most basic of information instead of his full knowledge on it. "All right then. Yes, Genjutsu is focused around illusions," replied Kurenai. With that said, Kurenai went on a long but passionate speech on all the key parts of Genjutsu. Naruto did his best to remain focused and it showed, causing Kurenai's opinion of him to improve drastically. At long last, Kurenai had finally finished her lengthy explanation. "So, is there possibly any Genjutsu you are willing to teach me?" asked Naruto. "Well, let me show you an easy one," replied Kurenai before placing her hands into a rat seal. Suddenly, Naruto could see a flurry of leaves flying around him before dissipating. He looked back down and Kurenai had seemingly disappeared. Taking a moment to steady himself, he prepared for whatever he would see. "This is the Narakumi no Jutsu. If you want me to dispel it, I can," said Yoko, to which Naruto shook his head. "No, I want to see what my worst fear is," replied Naruto. With that thought finished, a terrifying spirit appeared in front of Naruto. While terrifying to many, it didn't even faze Naruto, but he was still racked with fear. The reason for this wasn't because of what the spirit looked like but because what the spirit was doing. Naruto looked on in horror as the seal on his stomach was shattered, allowing the spirit to absorb Yoko, taking her away from him. "Kit, it's not real. It's not real, I'm going to dispel it," said Yoko in the most soothing voice she could muster. With that said, the Genjutsu was immediately dispelled. Kurenai returned back into view. "Kami, I never knew that I could be that afraid," thought Naruto. "Why didn't you let me dispel it?" asked Yoko. "Because if I learn my greatest fear, it won't be able to be used against me," replied Naruto. "It was still a dumb move," said Yoko with a HMPH. "Naruto-kun, are you alright?" asked Kurenai. Yeah, I'm fine," replied Naruto. "Hey, Kurenai-sensei, can I try casting a Genjutsu?" asked Naruto innocently, to which Kurenai shrugged her shoulders. I don't see why not. I mean, most of your genjutsu won't even began Kurenai, only to be stopped mid-sentence as Naruto looked at her with sickening, glowing red eyes. Won't affect you? Asked Naruto in a chilling voice, even though he knew she couldn't respond. Kurenai, on the other hand, could only gasp as the power of Naruto's Akuma Focusway sent wave after wave of subliminal messages into her head. It was so much that she couldn't tell her own thought from the other. She easily yielded to the power of Naruto's Kekkei Genkai. Her mind told her to get on all fours, so she did. Her mind told her to crawl over to Naruto, so she did. Her mind told her that she belonged to Naruto, and so she submitted. Good girl, said Naruto as he ran a hand through her hair. I'll make sure to take good care of you. Grabbing her by her shoulders, he lifted her up so that she could look directly into her eyes. Activating his Akuma Focusway, once again, he used his Kekkei Genkai, this time to send wave after wave of pleasure throughout Kurenai's body, causing her to pant. Now to punish you for putting me under such a hellish illusion, said Naruto with a hint of sadistic glee before using his Kekkei Genkai to send wave after wave of pain through her body. Kurenai's pants immediately turned to gasps and cries as her body was racked with a burning pain like she was on fire, but it quickly dissipated, giving way to intense pleasure. It was like a press of a button. Pain and pleasure immediately caused her reaction to change. From moaning lewdly to crying out. Once Naruto was satisfied with her punishment, he gently laid her on the soft grass. I know that you're seeing Asuma-sensei. Not many people know about it, but it's very obvious when I can read your thoughts, said Naruto. What you see in him, I have no idea. How he uses the wind for his jutsu when he is surrounded by a cloud of smoke at all times, I do not know, continued on Naruto with a malevolent smile on his face. Don't worry, once this is over, I'll make sure you'll be happy, said Naruto as he sat down beside Kurenai. Naruto guided a hand to Kurenai's slit, running a finger over the fabric. He could feel that it was drenched. Having had multiple orgasms during Naruto's punishment, Kurenai's breath was raspy, and her skin was slick with a light sheen of sweat. However, she was still quite responsive as she let out a quiet moan as Naruto ran his fingers over her honey pot. Naruto-kun, began Kurenai, her voice still raspy, kiss me. Hummed Naruto with an amused eyebrow raised. Well, I don't see why not. With that said, Naruto leaned forward to press her lips to his own. Her lips were soft and tasted of barley tea, a satisfying taste Naruto found. Naruto took pleasure in knowing that the proud genjutsu mistress had broken down so easily to his power. It made him a bit more confident in his plan of taking Konoha. He parted his lips, prompting Kurenai to do the same, allowing him to explore the inside of her mouth with his tongue. Moaned Kurenai softly through the kiss as Naruto began rubbing her through the fabric of her blouse. Pulling back, Naruto took a breath. Right after that, he quickly began taking off the majority of Kurenai's clothing, leaving on only the bandages around her arms and thighs. Even though the fabric had soaked up the majority of her love juices, more and more was still released from her hot love canal, showing just how aroused she was. While he was doing this, he made sure to pay attention to each new part of her he revealed, massaging her thighs, licking her nipples and running his hands down the sides of her hips. Kami, I really do have a thing for older women, muttered Naruto quietly to himself as he began taking off his pants. Good thing you do, snickered Yoko, to which Naruto smiled a bit. Scooting himself up so that he was between Kurenai's legs, he was surprised when the moment he came close, Kurenai had immediately wrapped her legs around her and pulled him close. Her actions were utterly desperate as she mewed and nipped at his neck. He ran his hands over her body, savoring the sensation of her amazingly smooth, milky skin. Gee, that feels really good, Naruto-kun, gasped Kurenai. Yeah, I'll make sure to treat you well, Kurenai-chan, thought Naruto. Lifting her up so that they were in a sitting position, he positioned the head of his length directly at her hot, wet entrance. Letting gravity do its job, he slowly slid into her length exploring the inside of her unique love canal. It only took a moment until he was fully sheathed inside of her hot, wet core, the head of his length touching the entrance to her womb. Your body is amazing, Kurenai-chan, complimented Naruto, to which Kurenai moaned a quiet, thank you. Bucking his hips as he began thrusting into Kurenai, Naruto let out small grunt as his length was wrapped around Kurenai's velvet walls. He soon built a steady rhythm, and the soft sound of wet flesh slapping against wet flesh soon filled both of their ears. Kami, you are way better at this than Asuma, gasped Kurenai, tilting her head back, allowing Naruto to lean forward and hungry kiss and suck on her neck. What is going to happen after this? Moaned Kurenai quietly, just loud enough for Naruto to hear her. Don't worry, Kurenai-chan, I'll be here for you, replied Naruto, causing Kurenai's cheeks to turn a cute shade of red. It was the strangest of sensations that Kurenai felt. She felt so safe in Naruto's arms. Was it all these random thoughts invading her head? Was it because she was being comforted after having a big fight with Asuma? Was it because of the mind-blowing? She did know was that she was never going to regret this moment. MMPH, moaned Kurenai, her breath hitching every time Naruto slid back into her. Kami, what if someone sees us? Thought Kurenai. Don't worry, no one will see us, said a voice inside of her mind, comforting her. That was mind-blowing. Every time Naruto slid into her, his length rubbed up against every nook and cranny inside of her velvety walls. She let out a gasp as she felt Naruto move his hands to give her a very pleasurable squeeze. How does he know that I'm sensitive there? Asked Kurenai to herself as her jaw slacked and her eyes rolled back into her head. Kami, Naruto-kun, I'm coming, wailed Kurenai, her voice hoarse from panting just before her core exploded in a flurry of pleasure. With a loud grunt, Naruto followed suit, erupting inside of the silky walls of Kurenai's slit. His seed immediately did its job, filling Kurenai's womb to the brim and possibly fertilizing her egg. He came so much that the excess was forcibly squeezed out of Kurenai's, dripping onto the grass. Pulling himself out of her, he laid Kurenai gently on to the grass and laid beside her. Why, you're amazing, Naruto-kun, sighed Kurenai contently, rubbing her stomach, enjoying the fullness. You as well, replied Naruto, resting the back of his head on his arms. I don't think I've ever felt so alive, said Kurenai. Was I that good? Replied Naruto sarcastically, to which Kurenai giggled. So, Naruto-kun, want to meet up during the weekends? Asked Kurenai, her voice hopeful. Sure, replied Naruto with a warm smile, looking over at Kurenai, who also had a warm smile on her face. What's going to happen between you and Asuma? Asked Naruto, his eyes glowing just the dimmest red. I'm going to leave him, replied Kurenai with no hesitation. Good. In one of the market district alleyways. Finding Yugao was easy. Naruto had managed to pick up her presence the moment he entered the market district, and now he was cornering her in an alleyway. The proud Anbu officer held on to her katana in a stance that literally screamed experience. No bother though, there was no one in the world that could resist the power of Naruto's Akuma Fakasui. Come on, Yugao-chan. There's no need to get so serious, said Naruto in a chilling yet relaxed voice. His words only served to cause Yugao's grip to tighten around her blade, as she was confused as to why none of the other Anbu had checked up on her. Unbeknownst to her, Naruto already had the majority of the district under a very subtle but powerful genjutsu. Naruto took a step forward, prompting Yugao to visibly tense up. How the hell is this the same Uzumaki Naruto that I watched over? Thought Yugao, her eyes sharp. You're quite different than when I last saw you, said Yugao quietly, to which Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I've changed, replied Naruto, his eyes turning a sickening red as he activated his Akuma Fakasui. What? Gasped Yugao as her hands forcibly opened, dropping her blade onto the ground. Naruto quickly took advantage of Yugao's sudden confusion, dashing forward so that he was right in front of her. Yugao's eyes widened in fear as her arms were bound against the wall by Naruto's strong hands. The last thing Yugao could see was Naruto's sinister, foxy grin before he leaned forward to capture her lips with his. What the hell? Thought Yugao as she resisted against Naruto. While she was faithful to Hayate, she could not stop herself from admitting how good of a kisser Naruto was. His lips were strangely soft, and the way he was not very forceful even though he was forcing himself on her made her feel like she had butterflies in her stomach. Hayate, 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 repeated Yugao over and over again, Hayate, Hayato, Haruto, Naruto. Naruto. Though Yugao as she realized that the name Hayate in her mind was slowly shifting to Naruto. What was this insane sensation? Her lips felt like they were on fire. Her heart pounded in her chest as she found herself kissing Naruto back. In no time at all, her lips were parted, allowing Naruto to explore the inside of her mouth with her tongue. She followed suit and soon their tongues were dancing together inside their mouths. Moaned Yugao, her resistance broken. I might have just created the most powerful Kekkei Genkei with my creation of the Akuma Fakasui, said Yoko, to which Naruto mentally nodded in agreement. I am grateful that you gave it to me, replied Naruto, to which Yoko smiled. Naruto leaned back, taking a deep breath. He took a moment to admire his work. Yugao looked disheveled, her hair slightly messy and her jaw slack. A small droplet of saliva was sliding down the side of her mouth. Let's finish this before my genjutsu wears off, said Naruto with a small smile as he tugged his pants down, revealing his fully erect manhood. Yugao followed suit, messily pulling her pants and panties down, revealing her glistening slit. A small tuft of purple hair rested above her, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. Wasting no time at all, he positioned the head of his length and slid himself in. Ooh, gasped Yugao as Naruto sheathed himself inside of her. Lifting her up by her thighs, he pressed her against the wall and began thrusting into her. Yugao quickly wrapped her legs around his back out of instinct, tilting her head back in bliss. Man, I love this position, grunted Naruto as his fingers dug into the soft flesh of her delicious thighs. All Yugao could do was nod in response as Naruto's length stroked her sensitive, velvety walls, creating a very pleasurable friction. Small mews and lewd moans escaped Yugao's lips as Naruto's thrusts picked up strength and speed, and soon the alleyway was filled with the sounds of Yugao's sweet moans and flesh slapping against flesh. Damn it, Naruto-kun, why are you so good at this, said Yugao through grit teeth, barely able to get the sentence out. I've had a good amount of experience, replied Naruto before leaning forward to recapture Yugao's lips with his own. Moaned Yugao lewdly, desperately kissing back. Oh Kami, how will I ever go back to other men, thought Yugao, her mind hazy like she was drunk. A loud moan silenced by a kiss escaped Yugao as her love canal clenched tightly around Naruto's length, signaling her orgasm. Naruto had to admit, he expected her to be a little louder, but he was still happy that he was able to bring her to orgasm before climaxing himself. Increasing the speed of his thrusts, he let out a groan as he came inside of Yugao. Moaned Yugao as her walls were stained white, while her womb was filling up with Naruto's potent seed. Kami, I love the noises you make, complimented Naruto, causing Yugao to blush. Lowering her back onto the ground, he slid his length out of her. He observed quietly as excess seed dripped out of Yugao's slit and slid down her inner thigh. He smiled a little to himself as he felt that he had marked new territory. Looking back at Yugao's face, he leaned forward to give her a small kiss on the lips before putting his pants back on. Yugao-chan, I'll see you soon, so watch out for me, said Naruto, to which Yugao nodded, too exhausted to say anything. Turning his back, he applied a fresh layer to his genjutsu so no one would see how indecently exposed Yugao was before he left the alleyway, leaving Yugao to slide onto the ground, her legs unable to support her weight after her intense orgasm. As soon as he rounded the corner, he shunned away. You made good progress today, complimented Yoko. I do it to please you, Yoko-chan, plus I enjoy the benefits, replied Naruto, to which Yoko giggled. I'm sure you do, said Yoko.